Howdy, howdy, howdy. Um, so I have not received a response from OpenAI yet, and I'm going to reapply to OpenAI. So, uh, here's Codex. We will join. We're just going to go both. We're going to go for everything we can get. Build a new product. Um, Security systems. My GitHub profile is as such. I am a social media creator. I am an independent publisher. I am over the age of 18 years old. And I am submitting this application to access Codex and GPT-3. I feel bad because they've taken Dolly off the list, and I kind of I harped on Dolly, and I repent because I just don't want to act as if I'm a big ego, and I think the points that I made in criticism of Dolly are somewhat valid, but if I can have the source code, that's a different story. So apart from that, I'm concerned about the British Columbia Civil Liberties Association. Something unrelated. We'll come back to that and see if OpenAI actually gives me the access that I am so hopeful to acquire. Looking over this, let's just look over a summary of all of what the BCCLA is currently up to.
The latest down the rabbit hole of police governance. The saga of BCCLA's street checks complaint. August 20, 2021. The BCCLA took on the issue of police street checks in 2018. A police street check is a discretionary police. Read more. Letter from the board president to the community, July 16, 2021. Words matter. Context matters. Letter from the board president to the community, July 16, 2021. Words matter.
Okay, so let's, I guess, look into this.
Down the rabbit hole of police governance, the saga of BCCLA's street checks complaint. Posted on August 20, 2021 by Harsha Walia. The BCCLA took on the issue of police street checks in 2018. A police street check is a discretionary police practice where police stop a person in public, question them outside the context of an arrest or detention, and often record their personal information in a database.
So to me, this deeply relates to the body cam debate within the Canadian justice system. The body cam debate is a significant one, and many of the people, not many, but I have heard it mentioned on a presentation by the BCCLA that somehow that was locked up. That was somehow it was all wrapped up. And that police are wearing body cams. Police officers on all forces in Canada, one of the first considerations should be that they have a personnel-mounted cam, recording the entirety of their shifts. The technology is now probably somewhat affordable, and that is the kind of administrative consideration that I would like to bring to everybody's attention, as well as to argue in the court. I think that there needs to be levels of assurance that the technology will be honestly implemented. But I could see it becoming a major issue. To record 8 hours of digital video for every officer on every Canadian force, to budget that out in terms of the necessary hardware and technical support and facilitating all of the administrative actions in relation to that would be substantial to some degree, but far less substantial than the detriment that is going to be caused by not doing that. What is more reliable, a bunch of subjective human accounts and testimony, or high-resolution digital video? High-resolution digital video is much more of an objective, accurate account. And if there is any resistance to this on behalf of any administrative agency, that is an indication that they are corrupt. If you don't want high-resolution digital video recording all of the events in question, that means that you're the ones who are trying to hide something. High-resolution digital video is the best option that and audio is the best option that we have, and could be made available to the public for a more accurate assessment of the facts. Again, I repeat, it bears repeating. Any agency, any individual who would who would speak in opposition of this is dishonest and corrupt. The only issue that might arise is that deepfake technology becomes so advanced that it would be an excellent way to frame people. It would be an excellent way for the system to actually get away with murder more readily by creating deepfake video portraying the victims of the establishment as guilty perpetrators when they were just essentially assassinated by the state. But there are levels of security that could be applied to that, such as modules that are going to detect deep fakes. So as far along as the deep fake technology becomes, firstly, the human being's ability to discern real from fake video is usually pretty good. I can tell a lot of the time when a deep fake is legitimate and when it's not. So there's that. And then there's, secondly, the ability of AI modules, AI programs to give us an analysis of such things. I think when it considered in light of those two variables, I would proceed with implementation, because I think that those give us a greater assurance than subjective witness testimony on behalf of the perpetrators in this case. If the police are going to attempt to get away with murdering people, I'm sure they're going to do everything that they can do to try to make their game pretty tight in doing so. So it's these levels of potential progress, reform, and the corruption that taints it, but we must strive for more. And I think the middle ground, I think what I'm saying is valid. It's much more difficult to fabricate a convincing piece of deepfake video in terms of the technical requirements, in terms of everything that is involved in producing something like that. It's much more challenging to do that than it is to simply lie as a human being and say that things happened this way. To craft and be able to produce a video that convincingly accounts for all of the specific events from multiple angles, from multiple cams, all in correlation and continuity with one another, that would take a lot. And if investigation is carried off by the levels of the justice system, the agencies within the justice system supposed to be assuring public safety through such analysis, through such investigation, I think it would be a successful use of the technology. Of course, in opposition, I would cite the anticipated opposition, which is that the digital video, if the deep fake, if produced, would be that much more convincing for people. We will see. It would have to be an excellently produced deepfake.
Database. No provincial or federal statute authorizes street checks in BC, nor are they authorized by common law developed by courts. Data from Abbotsford, Central Saanich, Nelson, New Westminster.
And for all of the speaking on drug policy that I have already offered here, I think the saga of the street checks is so inherently tied to drug policy on so many levels that the drug policy is essentially 2/3 of the issue. The other is deadly weapons. But I like how law enforcement carries around guns on them at all times, things that are specifically designed and produced to kill people. When I'm standing in front of a man and I have no arms on myself, I have no weaponry, I'm simply trying to carry on a conversation with my fellow human being, and that fellow human being has a holstered murder device on them, it prevents me from having viable relationship with them, friendship with them. Because from my perspective, you're essentially waving a gun in my face every single time that I talk to you, Mr. Police Officer Man. And if you're such a good guy, then why do you need the gun? I'm just a guy trying to relate to my fellow human being. But it's this schism within society that is very, very difficult to address all the specifics of. On one level, police need protection from people with knives or other deadly weapon possibilities. But if you didn't have the gun, I'm sure people would be less likely to want to carry a knife. You know, like, they're telling us essentially surrender the entirety of everything that you are because I said so. And you can't really blame those of us within civil society for saying, well, I feel violated by that. That's a very personal thing. How would you like it if I extended the exact same offering unto you? Do exactly as I say, because I have this gun, and if you don't do as I say, I'm going to force you to do as I say. How would you like to live in a reality like that? Well, I don't want to live in a reality like that. That's why I became a cop. Exactly. And what I'm suggesting is that that's exactly why you did become a cop. Is because you're trying to get away with survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest implies a lot of bad things. There's survival of the fittest on both sides, Mr. Police Officer Man. You know, if you're going to try to force us to do whatever you say, I think there's going to be quite a few people who have a big problem with that and are willing to essentially fight you to the death. And in doing that, there will be losses on both sides. And that's what we're trying to avoid. All the justice system has to do is acknowledge when they went too far. All the justice system has to do is acknowledge when they need to apologize, when they need to make amends for clear and present and evident wrongdoing. And I think as long as that's done, as long as there's a acknowledgement of the facts, then crisis shall be avoided. But if there is not an acknowledgement of the facts, then crisis won't be avoided. And we'll all go to hell. So.
Westminster, Oak Bay, Port Moody, Saanich, Vancouver, and West Vancouver Police Departments reveal a decade of police street checks in BC targeting Indigenous, Black and racialized communities, with Indigenous women particularly overrepresented in all departments' data. Over 9,050 people and 92 organizations.
Now, when it comes to the Indigenous women, this is exactly what I'm talking about. The public needs the ability to examine the specific facts, and no format like digital video is going to facilitate that, because the the police officer's testimony is tainted by survival of the fittest self-interest. They're never going to be honest because their career puts them in a position essentially where they cannot be honest. If they were honest, they'd say survival of the fittest. That's all cops would ever say. Survival of the fittest to you. You know what I mean? If you fuck with me, I'm going to shoot you. I'm just waiting to pull this trigger. I hate you too. You know, like it. So it's the unfortunate reality that we should be considering what it is that I'm saying. High resolution digital video. I think it's the best way to go. We have the option now. The technology is here. It's probably much more affordable. And the responsibility of the officers to maintain the recording of all events at all times. I think, you know, if they can just flip them off, if a cop can just turn the switch on the recording device and switch it off whenever they feel like it, then it's futile. They have to be recording at all times. And there's ways to facilitate that. And I would love to work with the justice system in order to achieve that.
Organizations have been demanding an immediate ban on police street checks. Over the past 3 years, we have gone deep down the rabbit hole of police governance in Vancouver. Our deeply frustrating experience is a crucial window into the complete institutional failure of police governance bodies, like the Vancouver Police Board, as well as the provincial government, who is responsible for ensuring civilian and independent oversight over all police forces operating in the province. We share our experience so people are informed about the number of hurdles we faced, to imagine how much more inaccessible this process would be for the average person, and to understand how deeply ingrained policing culture is and how police governance acts as an appendage to, rather than counter to, the harms of policing. Making a policy complaint. On May 24, 2018, the Vancouver Police Department, VPD, released data on street checks from 2008 to 2017 based on a Freedom of Information request. According to the data, 15% of all street checks conducted were of Indigenous people, despite representing approximately 2% of the population of Vancouver. Furthermore, over 4% of street checks conducted were of Black people, despite representing less than 1% of the population. The data strongly suggested that street checks are conducted in a racist and discriminatory manner, contrary to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and BC.
The one thing that it causes me to think about is that it's not a issue of race. In my opinion, I can't actually know what it's like to be a anything other than a white male, heterosexual white male. I can't know. Because it's impossible for me to know. However, I think it's mostly a socioeconomic issue. And perhaps because of the residual effects of oppression, there are still more people occupying the socioeconomic status of those who are more susceptible to police checks as such. But I think that on the stark reality of racial discrimination is fairly minimized within our society and culture. I don't think there are too many actually serious implications of racial discrimination, and I think much of the time it's simply used as a strategy of argument. You know, I'll say that this is because of my race, when it's actually just because of the circumstance and the money and the inherent corruption of survival of the fittest on behalf of the establishment. Like, whether you're white or black or purple or green, the establishment is trying to overpower you. The establishment is specifically designed and incorporated in order to subject you to its will. So when that happens, it feels like you're being targeted, right? It feels like you're being violated. And you know, you're trying to defend yourself in argument. I'm trying to defend myself against an oppressive, violent force And so, from my perspective as a racial minority, it's because I'm a minority. But from my perspective as a white heterosexual male, I'm being violated and discriminated against because I'm a white heterosexual male. And from my perspective, if I wasn't what I am, this kind of injury would have led to society acknowledging how badly I was treated. If I was a black person that sustained injuries to his face like this at the hands of police, I'm quite certain that I would have been acquitted and perhaps given some civil justice. But because I'm a white heterosexual male, I have been given no civil justice. You know, so from my perspective, as much as people feel that they are being treated poorly because they're minorities, I feel exactly the same, that I'm being treated poorly because I'm not a minority. And I think when you examine the facts of my case, you might have some patience for that. Just as I am willing to acknowledge that I have never walked in the shoes of a black or a minority individual, and that I'm willing to extend a certain amount of compassion if I were a judge in relating to that reality, I think it's important to acknowledge the validity and technical truth of what I have just said.